welcome to the deep dive. We love getting into those really specific questions, the ones hiding right there in front of us. And today, we are definitely doing that. We're talking about blueberries, specifically that, slightly dusty, whitish coating you often see on them.
The haze.
Exactly. And our sources point out something interesting right away, this kind of consumer paradox. People see that white stuff, and, well, they often think it's bad news. Like maybe the berries are old or dirty, maybe even moldy.
Right, so they reach for the shinier ones instead, thinking cleaner is better.
Which, as we'll get into, might be completely backward. It seems like this visual misstep could actually be affecting what people buy, maybe even pushing them away from the freshest fruit.
It's a really fascinating mix of, how we see things and what's actually going on biologically. So our mission today really is to clear that up, swap that consumer worry for some solid science. We need to figure out what that coating actually is, why the blueberry makes it in the first place, and whether seeing it is good, bad, or maybe just neutral. And importantly, we need to tackle this kind of contradiction that comes up later, linking nature's own defense system with, well, modern farming issues.
Okay, let's unpack that. First things first, let's stop calling it dust. Our sources are pretty clear on the terminology. What's the real name for it?
Yeah, good point. The common term people might hear is the bloom. Simple enough.
Bloom. Okay,
But if you want the more technical term, the science term, it's epicuticular wax.
Epicuticular wax.
It's basically a mix of lipids, fatty acids, stuff the plant's own skin cells make and push out onto the surface. So, and this is key, it's not something on the berry like dirt. It's part of the berry's own outer layer.
Ah, that's a really important distinction. Of the berry, not on it. So it's like an intentional feature. Let's get into the benefits then. The sources call it the blueberry's natural armor. How so? And why does its presence signal freshness?
Precisely. Seeing that bloom intact tells you a lot. It means the berry probably hasn't been knocked around much or washed aggressively, suggests it was picked recently, handled gently, any kind of harsh rubbing, washing, even just too much moisture, and that layer starts to degrade fast.
Yeah.
And functionally, well, it's doing basically 3 key jobs for the fruit. Nature's pretty smart here.
Right. Walk us through those 3. The first one seems linked to just keeping the berry good for longer.
Yep.
Durability.
Absolutely. That epicuticular wax, its structure, it's very hydrophobic, meaning it repels water.
Okay, repels water.
So job number 1 is preventing water loss. It stops the moisture inside the berry from escaping too quickly, keeps it plump, firm. Basically, it seals itself.
Makes sense, like natural shrink wrap. What about keeping bad stuff out, external threats?
That's role number 2, defending against pathogens. That waxy layer creates a physical barrier, makes it harder for things like fungal spores, mold or bacteria, to land directly on the soft skin underneath and start growing. It's a first line of defense against rot.
Okay, so water retention, pathogen defense. And the third one you mentioned, UV protection. Like sunscreen. That one surprised me a bit. Don't berries grow kind of sheltered?
That's a fair question. Yes, it does act as a shield against UV light. It helps manage heat and stops the sun from breaking down the berry's insides too fast. And while leaves offer some protection, think about berries ripening late in the season when leaves might thin out, or varieties specifically grown out in the open. In those cases, or just under intense sun, that wax layer scatters the light. So yeah, it's like sunscreen plus cling film plus an antifungal layer, all built right in.
Wow, okay. That's pretty sophisticated for a little berry. And as you mentioned, blueberries aren't special in this regard, are they? This isn't some weird blueberry thing.
Not at all. It's actually super common in the plant world. If you've ever seen grapes that look kind of matte or hazy instead of super shiny.
Yeah, definitely.
Or that soft, almost bluish coating on plums. That's the same thing. It's the bloom, the epicuticular wax. Our sources list grapes, apples, cherries, cranberries, even damsons, which are those smaller, really prized plums. They often have a really thick, noticeable bloom.
Damsons, right?
Botanists see it everywhere. It's a known sign of, healthy fruit that hasn't been overhandled.
So the big takeaway from this part seems to be, well, it flips the script, doesn't it? When you see those dusty-looking berries in the store.
You should actually see it as a positive sign.
Right. It means they're likely fresher, handled carefully, and better at holding their moisture. You should probably prefer them.
That absolutely should be your first visual cue for freshness, yes.
Okay, and here's where it gets tricky. This brings us to that paradox you mentioned. We've just established the bloom as this amazing natural protection against natural threats. What about the threats we introduce, like from farming?
Exactly. This is where we need to be really clear and separate two different ideas. Natural freshness versus, let's call it, agricultural cleanliness. The bloom is a great sign of the berry's physical health and how gently it was treated. Full stop. However, it tells you absolutely nothing, zero, about whether there's man-made pesticide residue on or in the fruit. Those are two totally separate things.
Okay, let's stick with the handling for a second before the chemicals. You said the bloom is easily damaged. How does that work? If someone, say a packer, tries to wash the berries to make them look shiny, what's the trade-off?
They're basically sacrificing the berry's shelf life. Think about washing berries at home. You often rub them a bit under the water, right?
Sure.
That friction is enough to scour off that protective wax. And once that water-repelling barrier is gone, the berry is instantly more vulnerable. It starts losing moisture faster, gets softer quicker, and without that physical shield, mold spores have a much easier time taking hold.
Ah, so the shiny berry might look cleaner, but it's actually lost its best defense against spoiling just because someone tried to make it look more appealing.
Pretty much. It's an effort to meet that consumer preference for shiny, but it inadvertently makes the fruit spoil faster.
That seems like a bad cycle.
Yeah.
You buy the shiny ones because they look good, they go bad quickly.
And then you might blame the store or the berries in general, right? When maybe the issue was that they were essentially stripped of their natural protection before you even bought them.
Wow. Okay. Now let's pivot back to the chemical side. Because the warning in our sources here is, well, it's pretty stark. Blueberries, despite having this great natural design, are often flagged for having high levels of chemical residue. Why is that? What makes them prone to this?
There are a few factors involved based on how they're grown conventionally. First, blueberries have quite thin skin,
Thin skin, okay.
which means chemicals sprayed during growing can potentially be absorbed or just stick to the surface more easily compared to, say, a fruit with a thick rind. Second, they tend to grow in these tight little clusters. That makes it hard for sprays to wash off completely, either through rain or, post-harvest rinsing if it happens. Things get trapped in there.
Clusters, okay.
Makes sense. And maybe most importantly, blueberries often have a long growing season with multiple harvests from the same bushes. This can mean growers might need to apply pesticides or fungicides multiple times throughout the season to protect the crop. And that can lead to a buildup, a sort of cumulative residue on the berries picked later on.
That context is really helpful. It's not just random. There are structural and practical farming reasons why residue might be higher. Now, you mentioned our sources cite a specific report about this to give listeners some context for this claim.
Yes, the reference that often comes up in discussions like this and is mentioned in our source material is the 2025 Dirty Dozen report. It's worth explaining what that is. It's usually put out annually by groups like the Environmental Working Group. They analyze public data from government testing programs like the USDA's, and they essentially rank conventional fruits and vegetables based on the pesticide residues found after typical washing. Blueberries often appear on that list, in the group with higher detected residues.
Got it. So it's based on analyzing government test data on conventional produce.
Correct.
So this really highlights the duality, doesn't it? You're the shopper, standing in the produce aisle, looking at 2 packs of blueberries. One pack has that nice hazy bloom all over it. The other pack looks shiny, maybe recently washed.
And what we've learned is that bloom is your best sign that the berry itself is structurally sound, well hydrated, and hasn't been roughed up. It signals natural quality and likely a longer shelf life at home.
But that very same bloom tells you absolutely nothing about its chemical load from farming.
Exactly. The berry with the perfect bloom might still carry that higher pesticide residue load that reports like the Dirty Dozen flag for conventional versions.
And the shiny berry. It might have the same chemical load, potentially, plus it's lost its natural protection, making it more likely to dehydrate or get moldy faster.
It forces you to really think about what clean means in this context. Are you looking for physical integrity and natural protection? Or are you primarily concerned about chemical residues?
Because the visual cue of the bloom only speaks to the first part, not the second.
Right. The epicuticular wax tells you about handling and hydration. It doesn't tell you about the spray schedule on the farm.
It seems then the ideal scenario, if you want both freshness and lower chemical risk, would be to look for berries that have the bloom and are certified organic.
Logically, yes. The bloom would suggest gentle handling and freshness, and the organic label addresses the concern about synthetic pesticide applications. That combination would cover both bases we've discussed.
But if organic isn't an option or available, You're kind of stuck making a choice based on incomplete visual information.
Pretty much. You're using a natural sign, the bloom, that most people misunderstand, to judge a fruit that might carry an invisible chemical burden.
It really does complicate that simple act of picking out some blueberries. We started just wanting to know what the dust was.
And we ended up finding that the best visual sign of freshness tells us nothing about potential chemical residues.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive on the blueberry bloom. Two big takeaways, it seems. One, that whitish, dusty coating, it's good. It's a natural wax called the bloom, signaling freshness and gentle handling.
Definitely. And two, despite that natural protection, conventional blueberries are often cited in reports for potentially having higher levels of pesticide residue. The bloom doesn't protect against that.
Right. Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe ponder next time you're shopping. We're so conditioned by visual cues, aren't we? We see dusty, we think dirty. And what do we often do when we get fruit home?
We wash it, sometimes quite aggressively, scrubbing away, trying to get it clean.
But think about what you're actually doing then. You're scrubbing off that beneficial bloom, that natural wax we just talked about.
You're solving a visual problem, the harmless bloom, that wasn't really a problem at all. And meanwhile, that aggressive washing might not even fully remove the chemical residues, which can sometimes be absorbed just under the skin or cling on stubbornly.
So the question to ask yourself is, which kind of protection are you prioritizing? The natural physical defense the berry built for itself, or the feeling of protection you get from trying to wash away invisible agricultural chemicals?
It definitely changes how you might look at that container of blueberries next time. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into epicuticular wax. We hope knowing a bit more about the bloom helps you navigate the produce aisle, even for something as small as a blueberry.